One injury, big piece of injury news outside of last night's game was at Dolphins camp.
Yeah.
Their left tackle, Terron Armstead, was carted off the field due to an apparent leg injury. Ian Rappaport reports Armstead does not require surgery and is already questionable for week 1. This is a guy that, when he's been at his best, he's one of the best tackles in the league. The problem is the last 3 years, he's missed a lot of time with a lot of different injuries.
And Jay, he's one of those few offensive line that actually moves the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
The betting line, I should say, not the offensive line.
Yeah, he moves the offensive line as well.
Right,
yeah,
but
everything
he's
gets
an
worse.
offensive lineman who moves the betting line.
He is, and it's largely because of, one, what's behind him, which has not been much historically, and then also just with Tua. Tua's not a guy you really want outside of structure. You want everything to be perfect for Tua so he can just make his reads, execute his throws. And I just think back to the game against Houston that Miami played last year. Armstead comes out. They take 4 sacks in 10 snaps.
Yeah.
It was just a joke. And so Armstead, he is a guy who can move the line, a point and a half potentially, given the right matchup and context. And so he is, I would say that he is basically just as important to them as Tyreek Hill is. Because at least you have Jalen Waddle on the other side of Tyreek Hill. You have other weapons. There's no replacement for Terron Armstead.
I don't know that there's a fantasy takeaway from this because the running back situation is still a little bit of a mess. We're still trying to figure out whether it's going to be Mostert or Jeff Wilson Jr. or Devon Achane. You're still going to draft Hill and Waddle high, but it does sort of like give you a little bit of a pause here about the Dolphins. I'm not adjusting my rankings, but it's just sort of one of those things that's like good to know, and maybe if you're chasing one of those Dolphins running backs, you're sort of like, I'll wait another round and see if they're still there, kind of thing. I don't know. You don't love it.
There's just some shaky foundations there between the Jalen Ramsey injury, which was already, he's going to be out long term. The Tua with the concussions, Terron Armstead, who already you're pretty happy if you got 13 games out of Terron Armstead. And now everything that's going on, I don't know, it feels like it's all kind of teetering a little bit.
It's tough. By the way, again, they had to start a playoff game with Skylar Thompson last year, a 7th round draft pick. But, I'm a big believer in Mike McDaniel, but this is arguably the toughest division in football.
Yep.
Between the Bills, the Jets now, and we don't think the Patriots are going to be bad.
Their defense is going to be really good. So
yes,
that's why that matters here so much.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So during the Browns games, we've seen a lot of DTR, but a lot of the news coming out of camp, of course, has been around their starter and Deshaun Watson, who we briefly discussed just a couple moments before. And the reports are the Browns' passing game has been, in quotes, completely unimpressive. This is the Athletic's Zach Jackson, who covers the team very closely. Anything that involves Deshaun Watson remaining in the pocket has been an adventure this far in training camp.
Yeah, I think this is a massive concern, and often you shouldn't read too much into preseason reports, but I think this is the one that's concerning because it's been, 3 years since Deshaun Watson was a superstar quarterback that they're paying him like. And, at the end of last season, it wasn't so much that, he didn't have a mastery of the offense, which whatever, that's fine. It's just that he just wasn't executing the throws. He looked like Marcus Mariota in preseason. And if that's continuing, I'm not sure we're just going to get to week 1 and Deshaun Watson is magically going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL again. And then for fantasy purposes, I don't really know what to do with the guy because I get the upside where he could absolutely be a top 3, top 5 QB in fantasy. But at the same time, there's just the idea of Deshaun Watson. We don't actually have anything to support it.
Last year, weeks 13 through 18, those games that he played in, that he returned, he was 23rd in yards per attempt out of 30 qualified quarterbacks. He was 26th in passer rating out of 30 qualified quarterbacks. To the eye test, he looked bad. And you're right. You're like, everyone's sort of like, it was, there was a lot going on last year, all the off the field issues. He was coming into the middle of the season trying to learn the offense and everything like that. But it'll be better this year. And but you're right. It has been a long time since we have seen Deshaun Watson, superstar quarterback.
Yeah.
Many, many years.
And it's not like at the end of last year that he was behind the Rams offensive line and had Cooper Kupp out. He was behind one of the 3 best offensive lines in football. He had Amari Cooper healthy. He had Nick Chubb healthy. He was in a perfect context to look better than he did. I get it. You wipe away last year because of the weird situation and him coming in so late into the season and they're pretty much out of the playoffs. But the fact that it doesn't seem to look better yet already, I don't know. I would not be buying any Cleveland stock.
I'm at quarterback 9 and I'm nervous about that. And I will be honest with you, I don't have him in any leagues. Generally I've been more of a earlier quarterback. I found myself with a lot of Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, 2 guys that I think have huge years this year. And then if not, then I kind of wait longer and I'm sort of in that, the Tua Jared Goff range. Or I'll pick Richardson and like.
Right.
Deshaun Watson is one of the highest variance players in the NFL this year in terms of range of outcomes. He could be back, right? And by the way, he doesn't have to be a good NFL quarterback to be a good fantasy quarterback because of the legs, right? I mean, like last year, as disastrous as he was quarterback 16 on a points per game basis. Like he was still middle of the pack last year, even though he was much worse from an NFL perspective. So he can the rushing will keep his floor reasonably high. Like he's not going to be a disaster as a fantasy quarterback. But he's got top 5 fantasy upside. He's also got like QB 14.
Yeah.
Like he could be Derek Carr.
Sure. And here's the thing: is that
from
if
a
you're
fantasy points perspective,
if you're in a 12-team league, one quarterback, and you take Deshaun Watson as your first quarterback, I'd be wanting to get Daniel Jones or Kirk Cousins or someone in that 13 to 15 type of range, because you don't want to go in with Deshaun Watson and then like Ryan Tannehill. I think you want a bit more upside.
I agree. I don't want to leave a draft with Deshaun Watson being my only quarterback, but I actually would go slightly opposite there. I wouldn't mind pairing Deshaun Watson with like Anthony Richardson. If you're in a 1-quarterback league, swing for the fences. Like you've got 2 guys with high variance right there, because the Kirk Cousins of the world, well, if Kirk isn't available, Derek Carr will be, like whatever. Ryan Tannehill. I like Kenny Pickett this year. Like I think the Steelers offense is going to be a lot better than people think. Like I think Kenny Pickett is going to be an above average fantasy quarterback this year. Sam Howell is going to get you 20, 30 yards with his legs and has a lot of supporting cast around him. I think Sam Howell is going to be a better fantasy quarterback than he gets credit for. So like there's going to be, that guy will be available on your waiver wire in a 1-quarterback league.
Yep. No, that's fair. I think if you can get someone like Geno Smith or Daniel Jones, maybe a little bit above that, I would. But, that's just the difference between me and you as men, Matthew. I drive the speed limit. You like to take chances down I-95.
Fantastic. 1,000%. Well, I'm also usually running late. Yeah. So I got to speed.
You got to take chances.
Fair, exactly. Got to take chances. But no, I do think we can get into a whole thing, but Geno is somebody that is being underdrafted.
Yep.
Because people are thinking, last year was a fluke. It wasn't
QB5.
a fluke.
He's QB5.
It wasn't a fluke. And Geno's even better in leagues where it's 6 points per touchdown pass.
Yep.
You brought up Kenny Pickett. One more note here on our player news, and this is staying in the AFC North with the Steelers. We know about George Pickens. We know about Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth. They have weapons. But reports are Calvin Austin, a day 3 pick from the 2022 draft, probably had the most eye-opening camp of any Steelers wide receiver. And if you need even more reason to believe in Calvin Austin's talent, here's Sauce Gardner with our colleague Chris Sims that had a lot of praise for Calvin Austin.
Who jumps to your mind as the toughest cover you had in college?
So Calvin Austin, receiver from Memphis. He caught me at a time where I was still getting used to playing corner, me being a sophomore. And I wasn't used to guarding smaller guys, but he gave me like the reality check.
So that, obviously, from April 2022, so that was a while ago with Sauce and Sims. But with Calvin Austin, this is a guy that was a state champion track runner in high school. Incredible speed. He just missed his rookie season, mostly due to injury. And this is another weapon in the Steelers offense that you could say they have a lot of talent, but they don't have a true burning threat like this, a true vertical burner, and Calvin Austin can be that for Kenny Pickett maybe.
Yeah, I would just be, if you want to draft him, take a flyer, you're going to get Calvin Austin for free in drafts pretty much.
He's a waiver guy.
Yeah, he's very deep, but just with the amount of guys that are there, and Deontay Johnson and George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth and even Allen Robinson, and I don't think I agree on Kenny Pickett. I think he'll be better, but I'm not sure a Kenny Pickett, Matt Canada offense is going to support 3 wide receivers being fantasy relevant, as well as a relatively premium tight end in Pat Freiermuth. So I think that he's probably going to need an injury to become really fantasy relevant, but certainly one to keep an eye on.
He's going to need an injury, or he's going to need Allen Robinson just to once again just sort of hit the wall and just be done. Allen Robinson's sort of interesting to me. Maybe it's like just can't quit him. He's going to play the slot, where he's going, where his size is going to be a real advantage, and you can play a mismatch there. And again, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're worried about Freiermuth, you're worried about Deontay Johnson, you're definitely worried about George Pickens. So I actually think that Robinson, who can win contested catches, he can win 50-50 balls. He doesn't need separation. That's not Allen Robinson's game. And again, he'll be matched. I'm not saying you go, that's another guy who's free in drafts. The Calvin Austin thing, I think, is a better NFL story than fantasy perspective. We were talking on the call earlier, and our producer Damien made this point, and I think it was a great one, which is probably best case scenario for Calvin Austin, barring a bunch of injuries, is like Ray McLeod. If you remember him with the Steelers, where they would use him on jet sweeps and they would use his speed, and he was, again, a weapon for the Steelers offense, but he wasn't a consistent fantasy option for them. All that said, if ever there was a team that you wanted to pay attention to when some, 4th, 5th, 6th round wide receiver starts making noise, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I don't think there's any team in the NFL better at developing wide receivers than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.